with the vision of sort of a healthy community that you each described a moment ago, I'd like you to sort of reflect upon how Santa Barbara is measuring up to that, given the assets they have. Is it doing as good as it should be doing? Could it be doing better? And what's getting in the way of more progress? Notwithstanding the incredible work that you're each doing, but try to get a sense in terms of if the community was taking an honest assessment of itself and being able to, whether it was a question of like, how are we doing on housing? How are we doing on access? How would you say we're stacking up relative to where, all things considered, we could or should be? Yeah.
So I think one of the biggest problems overall is a lack of vision for the region. We have a very divided county. We have a county that is split geographically, both physically and then politically, and spread out and carved out by agricultural boundaries, et cetera. What that means is we don't have a coherent vision of what we want to be as a community. And the people that suffer the most for that are the poor people and the people that we're trying to help. But because of it, there's a lack of political will and commitment on the part of stakeholders to say, this is what we want to be in 20 years from now. We want to grow by X amount of people. We want to have this amount of assets developed in terms of healthcare, in terms of schools, in terms of equity, and all kinds of ways that we can be supporting the region. So I mean, one area that Cottage could be helpful is helping to articulate a vision for what it is we want to be looking like 20 years from now.
Other thoughts in terms of how we're doing as a community? Yes?
I think we're focusing a lot, having been raised in Santa Barbara and now being a professional serving the same community that I came from. I feel like there's a lot of great services, just even talking to other colleagues from other counties. We do have an abundance of services, which is wonderful, but I think we don't have a lot of preventative services to make sure that we don't have to have all of these services. So whether it is like having that access to things or the housing situation, if we do have, whether it's rent control or whatever the solution could be, that could potentially have us have mental health providers actually afford to be able to stay here and live there and then provide those services. Or like the police or different other service providers that do have to relocate for affordability.
I'm impressed by the number of communities in our county who have adopted healthy eating, active living policies to sort of say, as a governing body, the municipality will look through the lens of how policies would impact healthy eating and active living.
I think maybe to echo the vision a little bit, or I would say we struggle with consistency, because we certainly have a lot of great organizations, and it's partly political or whatever's in the media. I think the focus changes. For us, housing has had its ups and downs, and certainly there's an underlying understanding of the need in Santa Barbara, but in terms of funding those organizations and supportive groups, it's really, there's a lot based on what's the hot topic. And so if it's homelessness this year, if it's housing, if it's kindergarten, whatever it is, then we're all kind of competing to get back to that point where it's getting the publicity. So I think some vision and consistency to say, here are things that will make long-term impacts, and let's continue to support them, and let's support them over a long haul, rather than you get money this year and then you struggle for the next 3 years and then it's popular, so you get money again. And I think that's probably one of the things keeping us back from what we could do with all the resources that we have.
Great, thank you. Other thoughts? Another way to sort of look at the same question, you alluded to it a minute ago, was that, as an outsider coming into the community, you think of Santa Barbara and you tell people you're coming here and there's a sort of general sense of affluence. And then you come in here and you see there is actually, an oft-quoted statistic of having the highest number of nonprofits per capita than any place in the country. So you think, there's a lot of really good people who are dedicated to making a difference. Yet, we had one member, of the press who was off record, but one of the things he had said was that every year he writes the same stories about the issues that Santa Barbara faces. So another way to ask the same question is, what keeps more progress from happening? Is it political will? Is it people working in silos? Is it lack of a vision? What are your thoughts in terms of collectively why there hasn't been, more significant progress on some of the more significant issues?
I think a lot of it stems around housing. We talked about that, and Chuck talked about it, that it's not only the low income that can't afford housing, but it's also the workforce housing as well. And it's gotten really bad the last couple of years, and it doesn't look like it's going to get any better. So until we have enough housing, to house our people, we're going to have the homeless issue. We're going to have people living mixed in a home that they can't fit. They're going to be in poor situations. And so housing is a major, major issue.
Out of curiosity, it has come up every single group we've had. And in different facets. Like you'd have an educator or superintendent talking about his teachers can't live in the district. The police would say the same thing. Obviously the issue of homelessness has come up, a lot. The issue in terms of, elderly who were hit especially hard with their 401ks and now can't afford their homes either. Or as people age out and there aren't enough places for them to live if they need assistance. So yeah, it's come up numerous times. So a question is the housing issue, has that gotten significantly worse over the last 5 years?
Yes.
Are there things that are in place that make any progress really challenging? Is it a landmass issue? Is it a zoning issue?
Yes.
There we go, we're done. Enjoy your meals.
So development is hard in any community
Yep.
at any level. We have a perfect storm in Santa Barbara and my family history is part of the problem, of people aligning around no growth, around maintaining us kind of a status quo mentality. And so the result though is the desirability of our real estate just goes through the roof, and we have way, incredibly inflated valuation across the board of our property, which makes development that much harder. But when I said lack of vision, I'm being really specific because right now no public agency has a well-funded housing department that's trying to create ideas for solutions. And we have a long history in Santa Barbara of getting together and drafting well-thought-out pieces that will sit on a shelf. But we have no good history of people taking the lead and saying, I'm the champion of X. I'm the champion of making sure that Santa Barbara, as I understand it, has the highest percentage of children who are homeless in the public school systems in the state. And it's a statistic nobody talks about. It's an 11%. We're the highest in the state. 11% of our kids are considered homeless. Nobody talks about it. That's not even on my work plan as something that we even want to do. I'm looking at verse 5. It's not something we even talk about. No champion for that. No champion for affordable housing at the elected official level saying this is a crisis that affects all income levels. Nobody's stepping up and saying that. So but I also wonder if we have a lot of providers, a lot of people saying we're going to do good to try to make change. But where is the vision? Where is that collective statement saying we need to grow as a community? Maybe we're currently 500,000 people in the county. What if we were 1 million people? What does that look like? That would mean then we could, have enough police, enough firefighters, enough teachers, et cetera. But how do we get there? What would that require? What are the obstacles and what are the benefits?
Well, I think I agree with that in terms of the vision piece, and I look at other communities and just take homelessness for example, and there's been some wonderful research documenting that kind of programs like Housing First initiatives, things like that, are really taking off around the country and seem to be having really good results. But how do you implement something like that here when there's no housing? So a lot of things that I think are very practical in other places are very difficult here, partially because of the cost of living, cost of housing, the lack of those things. I think also for me, one of the issues in Santa Barbara is that we do tend to focus a lot on response as opposed to prevention. And I think we also focus a lot on symptoms rather than root causes. So from my perspective, our organization's perspective, we don't talk about things such as racism, classism, heterosexism, inequality, and how that then impacts mental health, emotional health, and physical health, because it's well documented that those dynamics actually have a physical manifestation in terms of health as well. So we don't tend to talk about those things. We talk about how those things, we talk about the symptoms that those things result in, but we don't talk about the root causes of how inequality helps shape public policy or the lack thereof, and how it impacts people's educational lives, health lives, economic lives, and so on.
Yeah.